Hi there. Today we are going to discuss a very significant American literary figure, Henry David Thoreau, who was an American essayist, poet, philosopher who is associated with Transcendentalism and is especially known for his work Walden or Life in the Woods, which was a demanding and practically inspired production and advocated a simple life in the company of nature without the imprints of modernity. It is a journey that Thoreau took as a means of spiritual discovery through the assistance and inspiration of another of the noted figures of Transcendentalist movement, Ralph Waldo Emerson. In order to let Thoreau focus completely on his writings, Emerson offered him to spend some time at a piece of land he owned, which was in the woods, having a pond named Walden nearby. Thoreau built a small cabin and started living there with bare essentials necessary to live one's life. It is in these 2 years that he spent there that Thoreau wrote Walden or Life in the Woods. According to him, he lived there to suck out the marrow of life. So deeply he wanted to experience life in its essence. Transcendentalism is basically a movement that developed in the US in 1820s and 1830s. It is deeply rooted belief in the inherent goodness of both people and nature. While modern society corrupts people with its materialistic ways, stripped off of all that and left alone in the company of nature, people become truly self reliant and independent. So, Transcendentalism is rooted in a pure spiritual experience. In 1836, the Transcendental Club was founded in Massachusetts and it included eminent figures such as Emerson, Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and Elizabeth Peabody. This particular chapter, Solitude, is the fifth chapter in the book, and it basically talks about becoming a good companion for oneself. One must be self dependent, we must have intimacy with ourselves. In this particular chapter, Walden Pond is the main attraction, and the overall natural surroundings are the backdrop. And what Thoreau does is he discusses the benefits of solitude for the individual. So, at the beginning of this chapter, he talks of the unity of his entire being when the whole body is one sense and imbibes delight through every pore. Also, he has become part of nature, which is personified here. He observes the rhythm of the bullfrogs, the whippoorwill bird, the alder trees, the leaves of poplar trees. So, in the first paragraph, he just really relates to the sounds of natural things such as animals or rustling leaves of the trees that he could so finely hear in solitude. His harmony with nature is such that he feels as if his soul is vibrating with the same wavelength as nature or as all these natural elements. When he gets back to his cabin, which is now his home, he realizes that a few visitors passed by his home in his absence and have left a few tokens. Solitude has allowed him such an acute mastery over his senses that he has learned to identify a good detail about his visitors by the involuntary actions that they performed while they were there. Now, in the next paragraph, he observes that he is surrounded all around by a dense forest and has all privacy that he desires. He is surrounded by the railroad, which is visible, and the pond, and also his nearest neighbor is just half a mile away. But he lives a solitary existence, and so it does not bother him how far someone is from his abode. He even states that for the most part it is as solitary where I live as on the prairies. He feels like it could be any of the continents like Asia, Africa, or New England, as the woods are the same everywhere, full of serenity and peace. He is not disturbed by any human traveler. Therefore, it is very rarely that someone visits Walden for fishing and such. He even claims, yet I experience sometimes that the most sweet and tender, the most innocent and encouraging society may be found in natural object, even for the poor misanthrope and most melancholy man. There can be no very black melancholy to him who lives in the midst of nature and has his senses still. So, nature is really ever unfair and destructive. If it destroys the plantation and other things, such as all the crops, by excessive rainfall, that would be still a benefit for the grasses, and so it would ultimately be beneficial for man too, for him too. He even acknowledges that after a few weeks of his arriving at Walden, he felt lonely once and thought if human society was a better option and living in the woods um, is not such a great thought to be. But that was just for an hour, and he also was in a bad mood at that time. Gradually, nature, with its pouring gentle rain and its serenity, healed him, and he was restored to normalcy. He is not rejecting the idea of the human society, but he simply finds that the natural world and all its elements are more better options than human companions. Next, he claims that he does not feel lonely because he really isn't. He is enjoying the company of nature and his own company too. Also, one can feel lonely among people too if his heart is not in resonance with their thoughts. So, what is more, he also is pretty glad to have escaped the petty gossips of the barroom, the meeting houses, the stores, because they wear him down to sickness. He's away from human civilization, and that is very comforting for him. He defines his claim as, I find it wholesome to be alone the greater part of the time. To be in company, even with the best, is soon wearisome and dissipating. I love to be alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude. He gives an example that a farmer can experience solitude while working strenuously all day, but at night he may feel the need to be in company of his family and spend time with his people and not be alone. But a diligent student in the crowded colony of Cambridge College can experience solitude during the day as well as night because he is at all times involved with the idea of his own self, engrossed in his field of work, and that is why he is at peace in every situation. He never feels empty or the need to bond repeatedly with another human because he is involved in pursuing higher and intellectual pleasures. And it does not mean that you do not need the company of people every now and then, but it should also lead to some meaningful exchanges. And that does not happen very often. So people do not necessarily feel empty when they are filled with their own self or the realization of their own self and the thoughts and company of nature. Next follows his critique of society. We all know Thoreau is known for his ideas of disobedience to unfair laws and customs. Here he claims that living in human society can be frustrating because people do very little valuable things and often engage in too many rules and customs so that they can tolerate each other. He feels he is no more lonely than all the natural elements surrounding him. Rather, even they aren't lonely. They are all perfect in their solitude just as he is in his. The Walden pond is solitary, the sun is solitary, and even God is alone. He is in unison with all of them. On the contrary, the devil has a lot of company and so is in vast numbers. As for human company, there is an old settler in the locality. Now, this particular paragraph is very important. There is an old settler in the locality who is believed to have dug Walden Pond and planted pine woods there. The man narrates mystical stories of bygone days and new eternity, and he enjoys his company greatly. Similarly, there is an old wise woman whose fables are simple and she happens to know a lot about mythology and the world at large. But he even states that not many people have seen these two people, which raises doubts as to whether these are imaginary creations of Thoreau's mind or real people. What it basically underlines is that Thoreau has the company of God for the old man. The old man is really symbolic of God with his actions of creating the pond and all around it. Uh, he symbolizes God. And the natural gardens of the woman show that she might be a reference to Mother Nature herself. He even says that she is likely to outlast all her children. She is likely to outlive all her children, which is an amusing way to say that nature shall outlast all of us, all humans, animals, everyone. Next, he says that nature is so generous and so innocent that it just cannot let any man who is under her care grieve for any just cause. Finally, that means nature provides enough for man to be stable. Finally, he claims that modern medicine is not the solution for keeping good health. What a stark reminder in contemporary situation. We have no cure for the predicament humanity is in right now, and he suggests that the consumption of fresh morning air, which cannot be bottled up or sold for money, is the only way that man can hope to stay healthy. Medicines are not the answer. It is only by adopting a healthy lifestyle, healthy habits, and being in the company of nature that one can keep healthy. So, conclusively, this chapter promotes the transcendentalist idea of a spiritual union with nature. Thoreau believes that while it is okay to feel the need for companionship from time to time, it so happens that people often seek validation of others in order to evade their inner self, their essential deeper thoughts that unite them with the eternal things. They are fearful of facing their own self. Transcendentalism was fundamentally critical of the contemporary society for its excessive stress on technology and material advancement, its neglect of nature, its uncritical conformity, and the transcendentalists stress that every individual has a unique relation to the universe and it must be realized. Both Emerson and Thoreau tried to find this relation in solitude and in the lap of nature and also in their writing. So, this is basically what this chapter, Solitude, has to offer. Thank you.